Russia appears to be stalling on the battlefield, so in turn, they're threatening to level Kyiv. Seriously, new Russian warning just a few hours ago saying all foreigners need to leave because it is about to get nasty. And the reason for this sudden outburst is that Russia's having a hard time advancing on the battlefield. I mean, we are watching Ukraine's plan come together in real time, and it appears to be working. First, they're destroying Russian air defenses. Second, they're hammering Russian logistics deep behind the front lines. And third, they're inflicting heavy losses at the front with Russian forces advancing slower and at a higher cost than ever before. So let's get into it with some new footage from the last 24 hours showing how this is all coming together. Now, stick around to the end of today's video. We've got an update on the recent fundraiser. We're more than a third of the way there, a $35,000 goal in the first 24 hours because you all apparently are crazy. So we'll let you know where that stands, but incredible effort so far. Starting out with a new article in the Institute for the Study of War, just came out a few hours ago. It'll be linked in the description below. They said, quote, "Open data on Russia's battlefield performance indicates that the character of the war is shifting in favor of Ukrainian forces, at least for now. Russian forces' rates of advance are stagnating, while Ukrainian forces are employing novel tactics and operational concepts in efforts to break out of positional warfare. It remains too early to tell whether Ukrainian forces will successfully restore maneuver to the battlefield, however." And we've talked about this in recent videos. Russia is doing a lot of the same. Very little has changed in the last few months at least. You could probably go back a year plus. I mean, we're seeing minor innovations in technology and tactics around the usage of drones, but we are still seeing the Russian infiltration tactics. They're still charging headlong across open terrain. And they're still using their Shaheds and missiles to target facilities well behind the front that, look, a lot of those strikes are hitting home, but clearly they're not having a major impact on the battlefield. Conversely, we are seeing Ukraine shift their tactics, and it's playing out right in front of us on camera each day. The first step of that is the destruction or suppression of Russian air defense. They said in the ISW report, quote, "Ukraine has been conducting a coherent campaign to suppress and destroy Russian air defenses since late 2025 in order to shape the battlefield as part of more sophisticated campaign planning." And we are seeing this like almost every day. Magyar Birds just released a video today saying that they have now destroyed their 23 Russian air defense assets so far this month. One a day. Almost one a day. That is unsustainable for Russia, and we're seeing how this plays out. This footage, released by the Unmanned Systems Forces, say that just over the course of the last 24 hours, they hit an S-300 air defense system, they hit a 9S-19 Ginger radar, railway tanks with fuel, MTZ warehouse, UAV control point, over and over and over and over again. But the focus there that I want you to highlight, or that I want to highlight, is the air defense assets. Limited quantity, already not enough of those to go across Russia. Every one of those that goes down opens up more areas for Ukrainian drones to fly through and strike Russian targets further and further from the front. That leads us to number two of three in this three-tiered plan, the Ukrainian middle strike campaign. ISW says, quote, "Ukraine significantly intensified its intermediate range strike campaign against dynamic targets in spring 2026 in order to degrade Russian logistics at operational depths." Every single day we are seeing this. And we're playing some footage right now just released by the 1st National Guard Corps Azov of strikes in the Mariupol region in the south. This is nonstop. You know, the first one came out a couple weeks ago, I think, around Donetsk city, and now it's been daily strikes deep behind the front lines. You know, this one you're talking about 100 plus kilometers behind the front, striking Russian logistics, military infrastructure in broad daylight. Azov, in this footage, said, quote, "The territory of Ukraine should be free from Russian troops. The most reliable way to achieve this is to move the sanitary zone for enemy logistics closer to Russia itself and occupied Crimea. Pilots of the 1st National Guard Corps Azov are already carrying out tasks to hit tankers near the Russian border. The video shows combat operations on the Mariupol, Tangarog, and Mariupol Velnovka highways." Butchered those. They say there will be no more safe Azov region for the occupiers. Deep State Map, in their analysis on these strikes, said, quote, "The Russian logistics should suffer, be burned and destroyed, which will significantly affect the battlefield. However, it's important to understand that this will not create an absolute catastrophe for the enemy, because logistics is a process of maneuvering and calculations which the enemy will carry out. And it's even more important to understand that this direction is just gaining momentum. It requires time, resources, and of course the desire of the state to implement all these desired changes. Now, a quick note on where these strikes are taking place to give you an idea. It's along this road. We've got Mariupol in the south down here along the Sea of Azov. So we'll shift over to a different map. I think this one does a better job of showing the roads. They're hitting these roads leading along the Sea of Azov. So you've got red as the occupied Russian occupied territory of Ukraine. And what they're doing is hammering logistics leading from essentially Rostov here in Russia across this land bridge down into Crimea. So now with Ukrainian drones able to strike at this depth in daylight hours without much resistance, it shuts down Russia's ability to move things behind the line and reinforce different areas at the front or keep areas like Kherson, Zaporizhia, or Crimea supplied. I mean, we've seen this in recent days. There's been a number of Russian mill bloggers complaining of fuel shortages in Mariupol, certainly in Crimea. We had a lot of Russian mill bloggers continuing to complain that there's a lack of air defense all along this road. We'll play some of the footage of some of these vehicles getting hit. I mean, it's all across. We're seeing a number of strikes play out day in and day out, and the mill bloggers are getting frustrated, saying, where are the air defense assets? They're not there because a lot of those are being destroyed. But there's also apparently no mobile counter-drone teams. They are closer to the front or somewhere, not being utilized along this highway. There's not even any nets being put up quite yet. So it's worth noting that as we're watching this play out, this is likely a short-term advantage for Ukraine. This reminds me very much of when HIMARS entered the fight early in the war. There was probably a 3 to 5 month period of time where the HIMARS just rained down devastation across Russian formations. They weren't ready. They were not expecting precision, very lethal strikes at that distance. Eventually, they adapted and they moved their operational command a little bit further back outside the range of HIMARS, and we really saw, I mean, if you think about it, it's been a while since there's been like a massive HIMARS strike, or at least a lot of HIMARS strikes on very significant targets. We should expect Russia to adapt to this. It's just going to be a matter of how long it takes. And importantly, the impact that adaptation has on the front, because it's not just going to be a matter of no more logistics being hit. It's straining the Russian logistics lines no matter what. And that brings us to the third point of the Ukrainian plan right now. Russia is moving at the front slower at a much higher cost. So shifting back to the ISW report, they say Russia's rate of advance is plummeting during the spring-summer 2026 offensive. Russian forces' daily rate of advance in 2025 was 13.2 square kilometers per day. Russian forces across the theater has dropped to an average of 2.9 square kilometers per day in the first 4 months of 2026. So from 13 to 3. That's a pretty significant drop. They say this does not include the areas where Russia is conducting infiltration operations. They say where those are taking place, and Russia is trying to find little gaps through the Ukrainian lines. Russia advanced at 9.7 square kilometers per day in the first 4 months of 2025. This first 4 months, they advanced at 4.6, so less than half the rate of advance, even if you're looking at the infiltration operation. So again, you're talking about 1, 2, 3 Russian soldiers through the lines. They don't have control of that territory, and in a lot of areas, they're getting isolated and eliminated and or captured. In fact, we saw one of these today. Again, I think this lack of progress at an increased cost is one of the reasons that we're seeing more of these just kind of blatant lies or gross exaggerations by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense put out an announcement that they had taken Dobrosovo in the Dnipropetrovsk region, which is like significantly further than even some rather pro-Russia maps or maps that favor the Russian Ministry of Defense. They don't even have that being in the cards. So if we look at Suryak map here, moving into this area, Dobrapasov right here is the region. I mean, that's a good distance away from even where they have the nearest front lines. Now, what that comes from is a clip of a flag planting operation in that region. But I want to stress that it's the Russian Ministry of Defense. Like, the official report is that they have captured that territory. Everybody knows, to include like Russian mill bloggers. They look at that and they say, that's not objective control. You just have a guy with a flag that managed to make it through the lines. And I don't want to downplay that and say it's nothing. It is an issue, and Ukraine's going to have to deal with that. But it's interesting that the further we get into 2026, the more we are seeing these kind of blatant Russian lies about progress at the front. In no scenario is that flag planting equivalent to control of that territory, but the Russian Ministry of Defense says it is. It's interesting that they keep hammering that drum. And I think part of this is that the losses are increasing for less territory gained. ISW says, quote, Russia is losing more soldiers to make fewer gains, with monthly Russian casualty rates reportedly outpacing monthly recruitment since December of 2025. The Russian army is getting smaller. There are more people being killed or seriously wounded or captured on a monthly basis than are coming into the military to join the fight. They say Ukraine's I Want to Live initiative reported on April 6th that the Russian Ministry of Defense recruited fewer soldiers in the first 3 months of 2026 than it would need to be on track to meet its 2026 recruiting target. Ukrainian Defense Minister Fedorov stated on May 5th that Ukrainian forces had reached their objective of inflicting casualties greater than Russia's recruitment rate in April and set a new objective of inflicting around 50,000 Russian casualties per month, a target that Ukraine is on track to meet for the month of May 2026. That's insane. Like, for an army to stop moving and be stopped and for a war to fall apart, you need casualty numbers that are well below that. Like, if you're, bringing in 100 troops and sustaining 90 casualties, like losses per month, that's a shocking number. And you see countries fall apart when it's that high. The idea that more casualties are being produced each month continually than Russia is able to bring in, they're going to have to do something about this, which is probably one of the reasons we're hearing more and more, whether there's any legitimacy to it, the possibility of some sort of mobilization inside of Russia. Russians aren't stupid. They see what's happening to the vast number of people going to the front. Now, another part of this is that we are seeing more overt threats against Ukraine and Kyiv. Just today, Russia called on all foreigners to leave Kyiv. They said they're preparing to hit defense industrial and command posts, as well as command posts and government buildings across the capital, which raises the question of, have you not been doing that like almost every single day? If not, what have you been targeting? If these critical command nodes and defense industry have not been the target of these Russian strikes, what are you actually going after? The other side of this is there's the possibility that we see kind of a rather significant Russian attack carried out here in the next couple of days, kind of following that major missile strike from a couple days ago. I don't know how long Russia would be able to sustain that, but it does look like the reason that they're leaning more on those long-range strikes, kind of the terrorizing of the Ukrainian population, is because by all metrics, they're just not advancing on the front. It does not look like Russia. I mean, we've been this way for a while, but it's becoming increasingly clear that Russia is not going to be able to achieve their war aims on the battlefield alone. So when you can't do that, start slinging missiles and drones and whatever you have at capital cities full of civilians, I guess, looks to be the route they're going. Now, quick update on the fundraiser. This one's going to be over before we know it. I can't believe how fast this is going. So we teamed up with Ukraine Aid Operations. Again, incredible organization, 501c3, so every donation is tax deductible. Maybe that's why this one's going so fast. $35,000 we're trying to pick up for ground drones for a number of different Ukrainian units that need these. We've got a couple different kind of gifts or prizes for the donors here that I think are cool. $200, you get a patch from the 43rd Mechanized Brigade. $400, you get a patch from the 43rd and the 36th Marine Brigade. $1,000 is a signed unit flag. That's pretty unique. And then $4,000, this very unique metal figurine made from bullet casing. So pretty cool setup here. And again, Ukraine Aid Operations, just an incredible organization. I got the chance to link up with them when I was in Ukraine a few months ago, see some of their operations, the operations of Ukraine Aid Operations. Great group. And every soldier, every unit that I talk to, big fans about the transparency, how quickly they get supplies where they're needed most. Just a solid organization. So honored to team up with them on this one. Again, we're already a third of the way there. So if you're interested in participating in this one, maybe get on it fast, because I have a feeling it's going to be wrapped up here before too long. But for those interested and able to contribute, the link will be in the description and pinned comment below. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.